What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I am bringing you my top 8 live twin, evil twin deck profile that I managed to top 8 with at the Mendenhall Mississippi Regional this last weekend. It was 8 rounds of Swiss. I'm going to put my rounds sort of just on the screen so you can see them, so I don't have to take too much time talking about them. But yeah, I decided to take evil twin because I was testing Dragon Maid a lot, and I think I just played the deck too much before the event, and I kind of just wasn't feeling it. So I decided to take twins because it just has a lot of flex spots. It's a deck I've played a lot, and it's a deck I really enjoy, and I thought it had a lot of potential going into the event. And yeah, we were able to take a top 8 spot, and yeah, let's just get into the deck profile. Alright guys, so here we have it. We do have the mat, the Illusion of Chaos mat that we did win for getting top 8. You know, it was my first in-person regional back since like 2016. I came back right at the end of 2020. So we haven't been able to go to any real event since then. And, you know, my first regional back, we were able to take a top 8 spot, which is, you know, it feels really good. And yeah, I just want to show you guys the list and a couple of cards I was running and why I ran them and how they performed for me at the event. So without further ado, let's get into this Evil Twin deck profile. Alright, so starting off, we do have, of course, the 3 Kiss-A-Kill, and we played 1 Frost, which I'll get to in a minute, because I know a lot of people opt for 2. Then we ran the 3 Lilla, and the 1 Treat, which is pretty standard, and we ran the Brick, of course. To sort of explain why we ran the ratios we did, I think everything here is pretty standard, except maybe the Brick and the 1 Frost. We chose to run the Brick because, she's just too good with Trouble Sunny. There's often times where your opponent sets up a board, especially when they end with, Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, where this, with the Trouble Sunny in your graveyard, can allow you to play on your next turn. And that, to me, was too important not to play it. I know some people have been talking about cutting this card, and I just don't think that's, a possibility. I think you do have to play this card. 1 Frost, most of my bad hands sort of end up being where I draw one of the extenders and, no other play. And you know, that still happens even when you're on 1-in-1, but I never needed the second Frost. It is a nice luxury convenience sometimes. Every now and then there's a situation where I'm like, if I had the second Frost, you know, I could use this Tenki as an extender again, or just special summon it off of Lilla and get another draw. But it's never something I need. In the second slot, I chose to opt to run another Go Second card, and I think that worked out pretty well. I do think 2 Frost is okay, but I also don't have a second Starlight, so there was just no option for me to play the second Frost because I wasn't running a Starlight in Ultra. But yeah, I've been running 1 Frost essentially for the last 3 months, and it's always done well for me. I'm not on Pot of Desire, so there's no chance of, you know, banishing the 1 of, but I think 2 Frost is something a lot of people play that I chose not to, so figured we would just explain that really quick. But other than that, very standard twin lineup. It's 9 twins. Main decked, and that is it for the monster part of the engine. Alright, next up we have the hand traps and just sort of the Go Second cards, the flex spots, the things that make Evil Twins Evil Twin, because the engine is just a 1-card engine that leads you into a pop, a draw, and you know, Trouble Sunny is a crazy card. But really what makes Evil Twins is the sheer amount of hand traps it gets to play in a 40-card list. So we're going to start off with the Ghost Girls. We have 2 Ash Blossom and 2 Ghost Belle. I feel recently Ash had been underperforming in all of my testing, but Ash at the event was actually pretty good. I did take this deck to 2 regionals. Of course, it was a double regional weekend. We went to the the Kenner regional right after this Saturday. Saturday was the top 8 I got, and then Sunday I went to another regional where I finished very close to getting top. I sort of would have gotten 9th place, but I ended up bubbling, so we didn't make it there. But Ash performed well at both events, and Belle, of course, was just really good the whole time. Belle was so great against Prank Kids, and of course I think Evil Twins have to run Belle, especially if you're on Crossout Designator, because Belle absolutely destroys Trouble Sunny, just shuts her off entirely. And this also stops things like Called by the Grave, which is very important to stop because it again shuts your entire deck down. And it's also good at stopping some trap cards like Ice Dragon's Prison. So Belle has one of the best defensive roles as a Ghost Girl hand trap in the deck, stopping things like Called by and Ice Dragons. But it's also really good aggressively to hit things like 001, Bow Wows, or Doodle Doos. Hits things like Nadir Servant if you play against Invoked. It just hits a lot of cards. I played a lot of Prank Kids where this card came up and it was very, very powerful every time it did. So Belle was something I was really glad I played, and I think Evil Twins just sort of have to play her. To finish off the Ghost Girls, we then have the one I think is the best in this format, which is the 3 Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre is just absolutely insane in this format because of how it trades with the Brave engine. Ash and Belle can stop Enchantress, and sort of trade if you like high roll them, but you get super punished by them hard opening right anyways. And like if they hard open right, they're not going to trade with Brave at all. But Ghost Ogre can always trade with either Fateful or Griffin. I think a lot of times you hit Fateful Adventure with this card, but if I have Nibiru and I know I need to stop their play, sometimes I will wait for the Griffin, just so I don't get punished by them activating right, you know, searching Fateful, activating this effect, and they actually hard drew the Griffin. Like if I have Nibiru, I don't want to risk that. But oftentimes this is just here to trade with Brave, but also it's amazing versus Dragon Link, because if you hit Boot Sector Launch, sometimes that's just the end of their turn. It's great versus, you know, Pranks as well. Like there's just so many things this format in particular where this card is absolutely insane. So if I was going to max a Ghost Girl, it was always going to be Ogre, and yeah, she was just overperforming all event. And then next up, something else I want to talk about in the hand trap lineup is we have the 3 Effect Veiler and the 3 Infinite Impermanent. So I've talked about Imperm a lot in Evil Twins because it's not like my favorite card in the deck by any means. I've said it a lot in my past deck profiles, like you will always run Effect Veiler over Imperm in this deck in my opinion, because the way Kiss a Kill works on your opponent's turn to draw cards. If you draw Imperm, it's not an interrupt. Well, if you draw Veiler, it is. And I actually posted like a comment about a couple weeks ago on the Crush Cards channel. Shout out to Crush Cards, awesome channel. Where I was talking about how like Veiler's just like better than Imperm, and I still agree with that sentiment, but sort of for this event and how I was playing this list, it wasn't a matter of like Veiler versus Imperm, it was the fact that we were always going to play all 6, because Fluandereeze is just an unwinnable matchup. Like if we just put the like Engine versus Engine, Twins have 0% chance to beat that matchup. It is all about which flex spots and interrupts you draw to beat Fluandereeze, because this deck cannot get over Statue. Like nothing in the Engine can beat Statue. And like Trouble Sunny Pop isn't even very good versus their Engine. So Engine versus Engine, Twins will almost never win that. It's really like a 90-10 like unfavorable matchup. Like it is almost impossible to beat Fluandereeze. So I wanted to max out 6 spot negates to sort of help with that matchup, but also to pair up with the next hand trap. So Imperm is something I don't often play at 3 in this deck, but it's something I wanted to do for this event because like Fluandereeze just absolutely destroyed this deck. So we ran those for Flunder, and of course to pair up with the best hand trap, 3 Nibiru the Primal Being. And Nibiru was, you know, it was just great all event when I saw it. It's very, very powerful, especially in combination with one of your many ways to pair with it. I mean, you have the 3 Imperm, the 3 Veiler, the 3 Ogre. If you draw any one of those and Nibiru, you are just like guaranteed to board wipe them. Nibiru is always weird in Twins because sometimes you summon it and like you can't make a play because you only drew 1 twin, and twins can only activate if you have no monsters on the field. So either you needed DPE to like pop this to make a play, or you needed to draw 2 ways to a twin. And sometimes that didn't happen. I actually had multiple games this weekend where I was just playing Nibiru control. Like I would drop Nibiru and just use my flex spots and hand traps and all my good interact cards to make sure Nibiru lived and just attacked for game. And that happened a couple of times where my opponent just didn't even know what deck I was on because I drew 5 hand traps and Nibiru just had to get there. So this card is fantastic. You also have to play it if you're on Designator because this card alone shreds this deck very hard. We're running a lot of cards to help, you know, sort of play around Nibiru and out it, but at the end of the day, it's a very powerful card against the twin deck, and we wanted to maximize it not only because it's amazing as just an interrupt, but also for cross-out Designator. Then lastly, for monsters, we ran a pretty interesting one. We ran the 1 Artifact Scythe. So we're not playing Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, and we're not running Dagda in the extra deck, which I will explain to more how my extra deck looks once I get there. But we weren't running Dagda with this. We were literally just playing 1 Artifact Scythe that we could hard draw, and then Lila could pop it and we could actually Scythe Lock our opponent that way, which is really funny. But it really wasn't there for that. It's just a really good cross-out Designator target that isn't terrible to draw. Like, if you go first and see this, it's not really a brick because, well, I mean, it is a brick, but if you draw a twin with it, you're able to Scythe Lock your opponent, which is very, very nice. And then, like, if you go second and have cross-out Designator and your opponent's trying to Scythe Lock you, you just designate the Scythe, which is really, really good. But there are games where you go second and you draw this card, and then it's an absolute terrible card to draw. This got sided out depending on the matchup and whether I was going first or second a lot. But I think one of, as a Designator target, it's not terrible, because it does work well with your deck because Lila can pop him. So it's an interesting card. I don't know if I'd want to run Dagda in the future or like not play this card because, you know, it didn't come up too often where I actually had to designate him this weekend, but in testing it has. So we did play the 1 Scythe. On to the spells. We have the 3 Secret Password, the 3 Sunny Snitch, definitely like one of the most broken cards they've ever printed for an archetype. I don't understand why this card is like a searchable Tenki that just puts a 400 life point gap every summon. This card is insane. It won me games. I never burnt someone in time with this event, but you know, that's come up as well. Yeah, this card is beyond bonkers. I still can't believe how good it is and why they gave this card that additional effect. It's so crazy. And then the 1 home. I think this spell lineup is very, very standard, so not much to explain here. I was on 2 home in the past, but for this event, again, I took out the 2nd home because I was just drawing way too many twins some games, and I wanted more, like, interacts. And I never needed the 2nd home, so the 1 definitely worked. But I have played 2 in the past, and I don't think it's something I'll never go back to, because some events, like, I just don't see a twin and I want a 2nd home, but I was drawing too many twin this event, so 1 home worked out really nice. 2 Forbidden Droplet. This is something where I just didn't own a 3rd, so I didn't play a 3rd. I like, in theory, you could take out one of the Imperms for this slot, or maybe one of, like, the Ogres. You could take out some other slot for a 3rd Droplet if you really want to. But I think it actually worked out okay. 2 Droplet, you know, it came up when I needed it. It was a very powerful go 2nd card. And it works really nice with your engine because you're able to, like, summon a twin. They, like, Fog Blade it, or Veiler it, or Imperm it, and you can, like, dodge it with Droplet, negate their stuff, and still go full twin combo. So it's a very, very good card in twins, but I only had 2, so I only played 2, and luckily we weren't punished by the fact that we don't have a 3rd Droplet, even though it was like one of the best cards going into this event. Next up for the best spell of the event, besides like the starters, we have the 3 Crossout Designator. This card just overperformed in every single sense. It was just hitting so many hand traps that would have messed us up. Like, because your engine can play through a decent amount of hand traps. Like, if they ash your starter and you just tanky for the extender, you're good. But it was like often the times where I was able to play through one hand trap and they would imperm one of the links, and I would have to use this there, or I could play through an infinite impermanence, but then I had to use this to stop the Nibiru. This is like always mostly here for Nibiru, but it's very good in twins because you can set this even when you go first, and then you're like saving yourself from things like Called by the Grave or Ghost Bell, where they're trying to hit your Trouble Sunny, and you can like use this as a protection card for your engine. But also, like, twins, like the way this format works, your opponent's ending with a board and usually some hand traps in hand as well. So it's like not effective to be able to break your opponent's board and then you still lose to Ash Blossom. So this card is really good for me going second as well. I often didn't side this out because even when I was going second and my opponent was running Artifact Scythe, we would just leave this in. But yeah, it just overperformed in every sense. The only time it was bad is when I drew like multiples of it and my opponent didn't let me proc one of them. But yeah, this card was fantastic. I've had builds that don't main deck this card, but this is something, as long as the hand traps are in the format in full force like they are right now with Prank Kids and like 20 hand traps and all the pile decks, I think this card is going to be a mainstay in this deck for sure. Next up, we have the one Called by the Grave. This card is the most broken card in the entire game for this event. For me, 100%, I feel like for my games and a lot of the games around me when I was watching, games were literally just decided by this card. And also my opponents won games because this card exists. I like all event Saturday, I didn't get called by on my Trouble Sunny, either because they were not playing it for some reason, or they just didn't draw it right because it's a one of, or I designated it. That happened a couple times. But at the Houston, or I keep saying Houston, at the Kenner Regional, in the final round, I did get called by it on my Trouble Sunny, and it definitely just straight up lost me the game. So this card is absolutely ridiculous, and you should just be playing it because drawing it just gives you a higher win percentage to win the game. So this card was insane, and we did play the Monster Reborn, which is another way to play through hand traps. Like the 3 Designator and the Called by the Grave are definitely ways to play through, you know, Nibiru and the other hand traps. And Monster Reborn in the same respect is sort of for that reason. Like if they wait for the Trouble Sunny to Nibiru you, you can just Monster Reborn the Trouble Sunny. But oftentimes you can use this as an extender to make your plays through certain hand traps. Alright, on to the extra deck. Very standard, we have the 3 Evil Twin Trouble Sunny. This card is, of course, your main, you know, go-to one card combo end board boss monster. She is definitely something you have to play at 3. She's phenomenal on field, and her Grave effect actually just wins games. So very standard, we're going to run the 3 Trouble Sunny. Then I played the 3 Kiss a Kill and the 2 Lilla. These are all just main parts of your engine, and I feel like this is really standard. I feel like 2 Lilla is much more standard than 3 and 3. And that's just often because you have to go into Kiss a Kill more often because you either get the pop or you start with Kiss a Kill. There's just situations where the 3rd Kiss a Kill comes up but the 2nd Lilla does not, and that is why we play the ratios like we do. Then we had one Lingeribo that helped me win my Trap Eldritch matchup. This card is insane because it can help you play around Imperm, but also just into trap decks. Like Lingeribo is a very, very good card to stop either Skill Drain, Goes in Match, Sanguine especially. Like, this card hitting Eldritch Traps is so good because it vanishes, and yeah, Lingeribo is definitely a power card in the Twin deck. And we have one Dark, the Dark Charmer. We were playing Lina before the event, but I took it out for something else that I'll get to in a second. This card steals DPE, which is very good, and then when it dies, it can actually search your starter in the form of Lilla. So yeah, this card was really good. I did steal a couple of DPs and definitely performed okay. The one unicorn that comes up all the time, because this is Evil Twins, you can use it to co-link and get draws and go for game. And then what we took the Lina out for was Unchained Abomination. Having another Link 4 is really good for going for game, and Unchained Abomination can help you clear boards with Lilla, so this is a card I've always loved in this deck but haven't been able to play recently. There's a lot of things you can play in this slot. You can choose to play the Dagda if you want, but there were so many times where I wanted just another big Link 4 monster. If we were in like a super serious grind game or against back row decks, Unchained Abomination is actually broken. I really wanted to play Abomination. I think this card was amazing, and yeah, I don't think I would take it out for Dagda, but this is sort of the reason we can't play Dagda, is we just don't have any room. Like, these are all your flex spots technically. Well, okay, Unicorn's not a flex spot, you have to play that, but if you really want to play Artifact Dagda, I think you can take one of these out for it, but yeah, we just didn't have the room, and these were what I chose to play. And then lastly, another mandatory package is the Centauria, the Downerd, and the Zeus. Yeah, this package is broken. It wins games, especially when you can like drop it a board and they just have so much and you can just Zeus it all away. This card is also extremely good against Flunder because it just comes up more often than other matchups, because if you like go first and they D-shifter you, you usually just have to make Centauria and defense and just hope, which actually happened in my Flunder game, which I'll talk about more once I get to the side deck, because we definitely over-prepared for Flunder, and I'm glad I did, but this package is something you have to run in Twins. You can, like, run Gachi and take out Downer. That's, like, something I've seen some people do, but then you only get one Zeus Send, and the second Zeus Send definitely comes up, so definitely always running the Zeus package. And then for the side deck, which is definitely, like, geared for Fluanderies, and I'm glad I did, because my Flunder match was sort of the match that decided whether or not I would top 8 the event, and what really should have been a top 4, because we should have only had 7 rounds of Swiss, and I was X1 after the 7th round, and my only loss was the guy in first place, so we would have guaranteed top 4, and then got the deck box. But because it was an 8th round when there shouldn't have been based on player numbers, we ended up losing the 8th round of Swiss, which dropped us to 8th place, but you know, at least we still top 8'd, and that's what really matters. But yeah, this side deck was phenomenal, and just sort of going through it, we played one D-Shifter, and this is literally like just a designator target for Fluanderies. Like, you hard lose to this card. Like, there's nothing you can do except make Centauria. And when Flunder open this, because they're Flunder and they always open this, you just lose. So when I'm going first against Fluanderies, I keep the designators in and side out the Scythe for the Shifter, and we just hope that we see the designator and not the Shifter. However, in my Fluanderies game, I actually drew the D-Shifter and not the designator, so that game became extremely hard to win. Luckily, we did pull it out, but D-Shifter is here only as a designator target. I never sided it in for any other reason, so it is like the only card in my side deck that is just hard dedicated to one matchup, or I guess any matchup where they are running D-Shifter. But yeah, the one D-Shifter. 2 Raigeki was also sort of a call for Fluanderies, but it's just a good board break go second card. It didn't get sided often because, like, going second against like the combo decks and decks that are setting up boards, usually your hand traps, you're already running so many go second cards, it's impossible to side cards out for this. But yeah, this came in against Flunder, that matchup, and I think I sided it once against Dragon Link as well. But yeah, it didn't come in often. It was mostly there as a precautionary way to deal with Fluanderies. And then for back row hate, we have the 3 Twin Twister, which was my favorite side deck card going into the event initially, but one card definitely stole the show. 2 Cosmic Cyclone. These 5 cards are really good against back row, but also very good against the decks I was scared of, like Prank Kids and Fluanderies, because if you hit their spells in the standby phase, they can't activate. So Twin Twister, of course, came in every game against Pranks, and it won me several games. Twin Twister was extremely powerful. Cosmic didn't end up doing much. I sided it in a couple times, but I either didn't draw it, or it wasn't very impactful. But it was definitely a card I wanted for like Eldritch, as well as sort of dealing with Flunder with an additional card. So I feel like these 5 were good, and honestly, I felt like I didn't have enough back row hate in my side deck, because the only other cards were the Feather Duster and the Red Reboot. My Trap Eldritch matchup was very, very close round 1 on Saturday. And I sided in all of these, and it still felt close because he opened 4 skill drains. Like, he just kept drawing skill drain, and I didn't see the out until like turn 2 or 3. But these cards are here for the heavy back row matchups, and of course these are good versus Prank Kids and the Fluanderese deck. I also sided in Cosmics against Phantom Knight because obviously hitting Fog Blade's pretty good. So we run 7 like back row hate cards, but of course Twin Twister and Cosmic are just more than for back row. We have the 2 Tactics. This is sort of when we go first and we want to play through hand traps even more. Tactics is like a really good card this format, but I don't want to main deck because it's not great going into like DPE Scythe. So Tactics is either like does nothing or it is the best card ever, and I just wanted it for go first when I get hand trapped. If you open like Tactics plus either Called By or Designated, it's just an FTK. Like, it is so hard to lose that game because you negate their initial hand trap and then you take whatever other hand trap they had, or their play if you can just play around the other hand trap. And that's what happened one of my games at Kenner. Was I got hand trapped and I could play around it, so I was just like, that's fine. And then we triple Tactics Talent, and he had it a Veiler, 2 Pranks, and Fusion Destiny. And I honestly felt like I could play around the Veiler, so I just took the Fusion Destiny. And he Veilered at a spot, and I was able to play through it. And then he only had a Prank to summon, so we just popped it with Lilla. And Tactics was just very clutch, like, honestly, all event. It was an amazing go first side, and I think I'd do it again. It was just, like, really performing quite nice. We almost never used it to draw. It was only there to look at our opponent's hand. And then 100% the best card in the side deck, and probably what I owe my top 8 to, is 3 Mistaken Arrests. So this card hasn't seen play in a minute, but I think it was the highlight of like what I chose to play in this deck, and sort of the spiciest card in the deck overall, because Twins don't have a lot of flexibility. Like, you're playing the best flex spots in the format and your engine is pretty much the same. So this was definitely the spiciest thing in the list, and this card was 100% why I beat Fluanderese, and that's the whole reason it's in here. This card's amazing as just a better droll when you're going first because it stops the initial search as well. Like, they activate Priestess, you Mistaken Arrest, that shuts off their entire turn. Like, Brave Engine's gone, and their actual engine can't search either. And you can still draw cards, which is why this is so good in Evil Twin, because most of your draws and way you add from deck is just drawing off of Kiss a Kill. So this was like really good in engine. But yeah, against Fluanderese, this stops them for 2 turns. Like, because it's until the end of your next turn, if you set this with your play, and they summon Robina, okay, you Mistaken Arrest, or like they activate Prosperity, you're Mistaken Arrest. That's like really good, it stops them on their turn. But so like say they activate Map, or they set the trap card, and you like normal summon next turn and they go Map effect, like sure, and then they summon Eglin, we'll say, it still can't search because this lasts until the end of your next turn. So this shut down Fluanderese's turn, and the R turn, as they call it, when they're playing on your turn as well. This was just an absolute blowout versus that matchup, and like I said, the matchup is near unwinnable, so you need as many blowouts for that deck as possible. This is chainable, so it's just like better than Mistake, and honestly this card won me several games. Like, every time I saw it going first, I won. And this card is definitely something I'd side again in this deck as long as Fluanderese exists, because it is just like the most blowout card against them other than something like Zombie World, but that is susceptible to things like Cosmic Cyclone, evenly matched, and we didn't want to run into those. Mistaken Arrest is just like one of the best decisions I made going into this event, and honestly, I probably can thank my top to it because I would not have beaten the Fluanderese player if I didn't have this card, and this was the best thing of the event for me. I thought this card was insane, and yeah, I actually loved Mistaken Arrest this event. So yeah, that's going to do it for the deck profile. Here is, again, the nice mat. I do really enjoy this mat, and I'm glad to have won it, but more importantly, I was glad to top 8 my first regional coming back into the game, and haven't been able to play one for several years. It was really nice to get the regional experience again. It was 8 rounds of Swiss, 140 players. It was a good time, and I was glad I was able to top with Evil Twin. But yep, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe. This has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.